I found this article from whatculture.com to be interesting. 5 reasons Joe Rogan just isn't the same on Spotify. I'm going to go through this and give you my thoughts and if I agree or not, and I want to know your thoughts in the comments. Number 5, lack of big name guests. Well, okay, so in light of the ongoing global pandemic, JRE has actually done really well in terms of keeping their volume of face to face output going, especially when it requires sometimes 2 or 3 healthy guests, as well as ensure its host is not out of action at any cost. Well, Jamie did get COVID. The lack of any mega high profile guest is therefore understandable, but it is noticeable that we haven't seen an Elon Musk or a Tyson Fury since the switch to Spotify. There are some concerns, however, that this may be a longer term trend. Guests on JRE are not given a conventional appearance fee in a lot of cases, particularly in more high profile interviewees. And an appearance on the podcast was factored into a wider promotional tour or work in California, with the old studio conveniently located close to the world's film and pop music capitals in Los Angeles. Rogan's new studio, just outside of the city of Austin, is in good position too, with the host himself noting this did make him more accessible for East Coast guests. And clearly, the podcast is a huge pull in its own right. Only time will tell if this leads to a less celebrity heavy JRE. So that was number 5. I kind of agree with that, although I wish he would just have more of his buddies on, but they all got accused of stuff. So, number 4, the studio. As we know, the studio has caused major controversy. Although this did happen a couple of months before the show went to Spotify exclusively, the move to Austin and change of platform do go hand in hand. In a retrospect, we will probably look back on the two as part of the same process of metamorphosis that Jerry went through at the end of 2020. A lot of people don't like change, and some things that receive an initially poor reaction can go on to become timeless classics in their own right. For example, The Shawshank Redemption released a relatively lukewarm response in the mid 90s. However, we're now a couple of months in, and people have generally, at best, learned to live with the new backdrop. The more rugged old Rogan setup was so iconic it would become unmistakable as the shot that would appear on its thumbnails for YouTube videos, which have also now changed slightly on Spotify. Maybe it just takes time to bed it into a new studio. But as it stands, it just doesn't have quite the same feeling. But he is getting a new studio. That's what he claims, at least. He said he's building it, but who knows how long that's going to take. Censorship. Ooh. Barred Bloom Army. At the time of writing this, the jury's still kind of out on this one. A good number of previous installments of Jerry never made it onto Spotify. In defense of Spotify, it's not like YouTube have had a relaxed approach to the content of high-profile channels, with a few episodes of JRE going missing from the platform even before Rogan made his intentions to move to Spotify clear. There have been a number of reliable reports of staff at Spotify pushing for further editorial control of the show, with some at the company uncomfortable with his choice of guests. Whilst we couldn't imagine Joe agreeing to this, and presumably the terms of his contract are already set out, the subconscious assessments that now perhaps need to be made with the knowledge that conflict may be ahead could yet prove to have a stifling effect on conversation at JRE. No comments. He addressed this one. Joe, I'm not married to anything except my wife, Rogan. I feel like Neil deGrasse Tyson didn't let the guest speak much. In a parallel universe, DMT has a podcast and always brings up Joe Rogan. There were some moments of gold from the YouTube comment section on JRE, and a good portion of them were gently mocking the host. Obviously, by percentage, most of it was a horror show. But that is not a problem exclusive to Rogan's channels. Spotify doesn't have the same provision for community engagement. And with the longer format of the show, it's more likely viewers would have taken a look down at the comments than most YouTube videos. Whilst this may not seem to be the biggest of issues, someone at JRE did read them at least occasionally. Our money is on young Jamie. And they have been referenced on the show before, of course. Rogan does have a huge social media presence and presumably has not shortage of contact from fans, but this does create slight disconnect between the direct audience and the team behind Jerry that didn't exist before. And then we have the next one. Number one, another platform. A look at the comment section, or a lack thereof, on Spotify leads nicely into the wider point of this all being a bit of an inconvenience, particularly if you weren't already using Spotify for music. Or if you were getting your JRE audio fix from Apple, for example. This is a particular issue for those who might want to skip the ads. The price of premium subscriptions to both Spotify and YouTube is not insignificant, and suddenly having to deal with interruptions to JRE that you didn't before can be quite jarring. The fact that you are not linked to further videos, including shorter format ones, is another minus for Spotify. The beautifully eclectic mix that makes up the JRE fan base created some fantastically weird suggestions through the YouTube algorithm and cross-cultural conversation. Whilst a lot of the points on this list can potentially be put down to teasing problems, this is the one that could see the JRE train come unstuck slightly. Unfortunately, Spotify aren't as transparent with its number of views on each video as YouTube, but early anecdotal evidence suggests a substantial number of JRE fans have not made the migration between platforms. And I agree with that. It has dropped massively, but what are you going to do? He got paid, and I guess enough people watch. I tend to agree with this list. Let me know your thoughts in the comments.